When I walked into Dr. Raymond Parker's sociology class on the first day of sophomore year, I had no idea that it would become the strangest, most unfair experience of my college life. He was a well-respected professor at our university, mid-40s, sharp suits, always with a calm but slightly intimidating presence. Everyone knew his class was challenging but worth it if you wanted strong recommendations and serious credibility. I was nervous but ready. At least I thought I was. It took less than 2 weeks for everyone in the room to notice something unusual. Her name was Natalie Summers. She was tall, blonde, loud, and confident, one of those people who could command attention just by walking into a room. At first, I thought she was just naturally charismatic, the type who would always sit front and center, raise her hand, and dominate discussions. But it didn't take long for the rest of us to see the difference in how Dr. Parker treated her compared to everyone else. If Natalie spoke up, he would nod with approval, sometimes even finishing her sentences for her, like they were in sync. If she made a point that was vague or even wrong, he would still find a way to spin it as insightful. Meanwhile, if anyone else tried to contribute, even if their point was stronger or more detailed, he would cut them off quickly, redirect the conversation, or just dismiss it. It was subtle at first, but over time it became impossible to ignore. Assignments revealed the gap even more clearly. The first essay we submitted was supposed to be graded harshly, as Parker was known for setting a high bar. I stayed up for 3 nights straight polishing mine, checking sources, and reworking my thesis. When he returned the papers, most students received grades in the C or low B range. Mine was a B-, with a comment that it lacked originality. I was disappointed but figured it was just as standard. Then I glanced at Natalie's paper. She had gotten an A+, with praise written all over it about her brilliant critical insight. The kicker? I knew for a fact that she had been out partying the weekend before it was due, and several of us had overheard her complaining that she'd just thrown something together. At first, people muttered quietly about it, but nobody wanted to challenge Dr. Parker. After all, his reputation was intimidating, and he had the power to tank someone's GPA. But the favoritism only grew stronger. Natalie got to choose her project topics with more freedom than anyone else. She was allowed to skip presentations and make them up later. If she was late to class, he didn't mind, but if anyone else walked in even 5 minutes late, he'd scold them in front of everyone. It wasn't just unfair, it was humiliating. And it created a strange tension in the classroom. Everyone resented Natalie, but she thrived on it. She seemed to love the attention and power. More than once, I caught her smirking when Dr. Parker cut someone else off to turn the spotlight back to her. I thought about dropping the class, but it was a required course for my major. Plus, I didn't want to give up so easily. I told myself that if I worked harder, if I showed Dr. Parker my dedication, he would eventually treat me with the same respect. So I doubled down, pouring more effort into every paper, every reading, every project. But instead of recognition, things got worse. In our group project, Natalie was assigned as my partner. I figured it would be a nightmare, but maybe I could at least learn how she managed to impress him so much. Except she didn't even try. She skipped half of our meetings, gave me barely any material, and when I confronted her about it, she just laughed. Relax, Anna. Parker knows I'll deliver. And she was right. When we presented, I ended up doing 90% of the work. Natalie barely spoke, just smiled and nodded through the slides. Yet afterward, Parker praised her specifically, calling her a natural leader and the voice of the project. I stood there, stunned, while my classmates exchanged looks that said what we were all thinking. This was beyond unfair. That night, something about the whole situation gnawed at me. It wasn't just favoritism anymore. It was like Natalie and Dr. Parker shared some unspoken connection. The way they locked eyes, the way she smiled knowingly when he complimented her, the way he gave her opportunities no one else had. I started wondering if maybe their relationship wasn't purely academic. And once that thought lodged in my mind, I couldn't shake it. And then one day, I accidentally overheard something that made me sure I was right, and it was worse than I ever imagined. It happened on a Tuesday evening when I stayed late in the library to finish some readings. Dr. Parker's office was on the same floor, just a few doors down the hall. As I was packing up, I realized I had left one of my notebooks in the lounge near his office, so I went back quietly. The hallway was dim and mostly empty, but I heard voices drifting from Parker's door, which was cracked open just enough. I didn't mean to eavesdrop, but when I recognized Natalie's laugh, I froze. "You know they're all starting to notice," Natalie said, her tone playful but edged with pride. "Let them notice," Dr. Parker replied smoothly. "They don't matter. You're the one who's different." I felt my stomach twist. His voice wasn't that of a professor mentoring a student. It was softer, indulgent, personal. Natalie laughed again. "Different enough to get an A without trying? You deserve it," he said. "You have potential that the others don't." I backed away, heart pounding, terrified they'd notice me listening. I grabbed my notebook and hurried out of the building, my head spinning. It was obvious. Dr. Parker and Natalie had some sort of relationship, and it was giving her an advantage none of us could compete with. But was it just favoritism, or something more? The line between professional and personal had clearly been crossed. The next class felt unbearable. Every word he directed at Natalie now sounded loaded, like an inside joke. She, of course, basked in it, answering questions half-heartedly, knowing she would still be praised. Meanwhile, the rest of us were reduced to extras in their strange dynamic. I told myself not to jump to conclusions, but the unfairness kept growing. Midterms were coming, and everyone was stressed. I studied harder than ever, pulling late nights in the library, while Natalie seemed carefree. She skipped several classes that week, and when someone asked if she wasn't worried about the exam, she just shrugged. "Parker's got me." When the graded exams came back, my heart sank. I had earned a C+, despite answering almost every essay question thoroughly. Natalie, who admitted to me at one point that she hadn't even finished the last section, received an A. That was the breaking point for many of us. Whispers spread across the classroom. Some students, like Jacob, a quiet but diligent guy who usually sat in the back, started talking about filing a complaint. "This isn't just favoritism anymore," he muttered one day after class. "This is corruption." But there was a problem. Nobody wanted to be the one to challenge Parker. He was too respected, too connected. He had tenure, glowing reviews from faculty, and a reputation that seemed untouchable. Students feared retaliation, bad grades, destroyed recommendations, ruined chances at grad school. I tried to push through, but the resentment was eating me alive. Natalie's smirks, Parker's indulgent nods, the widening gap between her reality and ours, it was like being trapped in a rigged game. Then something unexpected happened. Parker announced that for the final project, instead of the usual essays, we would be creating case studies in small groups. The groups were randomly assigned, according to him. But when he read the pairings out loud, the pattern was suspiciously clear. Natalie was once again placed in a position that required the least effort, paired with two students known for carrying workloads. Meanwhile, students like me and Jacob got the most difficult topics with partners who were barely passing. After class, Jacob caught up to me. His jaw was tight, his voice low. "This isn't random. He's stacking the deck for her." I agreed, but what could we do? Natalie, overhearing us, smirked as she packed her bag. "Don't take it personally," she said. "Some of us are just built to succeed." Her arrogance lit a fire in me. That night, I pulled out every piece of work from the semester and started comparing. I noticed strange patterns, comments that didn't match the quality of the work, grade distributions that made no sense. It wasn't just favoritism anymore. It looked systematic. Still, I knew suspicions weren't enough. I needed proof. Then fate handed me something I never expected. One evening, while working in the library again, I saw Natalie slip into Dr. Parker's office. She wasn't carrying any books or assignments, just her phone and a coffee. Curiosity got the better of me, and I lingered nearby, pretending to scroll through my laptop. About 20 minutes later, she walked out, looking smug and adjusting her sweater like she'd just come from somewhere far too comfortable. But it wasn't until she dropped something on her way out that the real shock came. A folded piece of paper slipped from her notebook. I bent down and picked it up before she noticed. My hands trembled when I read the words scrawled across the top: Final exam questions, confidential. Natalie had the test in advance. I stood frozen in the hallway, staring at the sheet of paper in my hands. It wasn't a draft or some vague notes. It was the actual final exam, typed up and labeled, with the exact essay questions and prompts that would determine nearly half of our grade. My pulse raced. If Natalie had this, then the whole class was competing in a rigged contest from the start. For a moment, I debated whether to give it back, pretend I hadn't seen it, and just keep my head down. But the anger inside me burned too hot. Natalie wasn't just getting favoritism anymore. She had access to the exam itself. That wasn't unfair. That was cheating. I slipped the paper into my folder before she could notice. The next morning, I showed it to Jacob. His eyes widened as he scanned the page. "This is it," he whispered. "This is proof. They can't ignore this." But his expression shifted to worry. "You realize if we go public with this, Parker will know it came from us. And if they spin it as you stealing the exam." He didn't need to finish the sentence. We spent the next few days debating what to do. On one hand, the evidence was undeniable. On the other, the risk was massive. I kept imagining Parker twisting the narrative, Natalie smirking while I got dragged before the dean for dishonesty. Meanwhile, Natalie strutted through class as if nothing was wrong. She barely took notes, doodled in the margins of her notebook, and didn't even pretend to study during review sessions. She already knew she had it in the bag. I decided to test my theory. During one review, Parker asked us to brainstorm possible essay themes. I watched Natalie carefully. Sure enough, she steered the conversation toward one of the exact prompts from the exam. Parker praised her insight like always, while the rest of us sat there, clueless that she already had the answers. That night, Jacob and I came up with a plan. We'd finish our projects, stay quiet until after grades were posted, and then submit the exam sheet to the academic board anonymously. That way, Parker couldn't retaliate against us directly. It seemed like the safest approach. But the situation escalated faster than we expected. The day of the exam arrived. I walked into the classroom with my heart pounding, clutching my pencil like it was a weapon. The test was exactly as I had seen on the sheet. Every single prompt. Natalie breezed through hers, barely hiding her smug smile. Meanwhile, the rest of us sweated and struggled. When we walked out, Jacob muttered, "This is going to crush half the class. She'll walk out with another A." But something strange happened a week later. Instead of handing back our exams in class like usual, Parker sent out an email saying they would be delayed due to unforeseen circumstances. The rumor mill went wild. Some thought he had lost the exams. Others joked he was just taking his sweet time. But Jacob and I exchanged a look. Something wasn't right. Then, 2 days later, Natalie slipped up. I overheard her bragging in the student cafe to one of her friends. Parker freaked out when he realized someone might have seen the test. He's trying to figure out how to cover his tracks. My blood ran cold. Did she know it was me? Did Parker? The following week, Parker suddenly changed demeanor. He was colder, stricter, more suspicious. He gave us busy work assignments, extended deadlines randomly, and acted like he was under constant pressure. Natalie, meanwhile, seemed less smug, almost nervous. Jacob pulled me aside one afternoon. He knows. Someone tipped him off. If we wait until grades come out, it might be too late. The tension became unbearable. I couldn't concentrate in other classes. My stomach churned whenever I saw Parker or Natalie whispering in the hallway. It was like watching two conspirators trying to patch up a sinking ship. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I walked into the student integrity office with the exam sheet. My hands shook as I slid it across the desk to the administrator. "I need to report something," I said. The woman looked at the paper, then back at me. "Where did you get this?" I hesitated, then lied. "I found it in the library." I thought it was trash at first. But when I saw it was the final, I realized something was wrong. She studied me for a long moment before nodding. "You did the right thing." For the first time in weeks, I felt relief. Maybe justice would finally catch up to Parker and Natalie. but I underestimated just how far they were willing to go to protect themselves. Because the next day, I got an email that made my blood turn to ice. I was being called in for an academic misconduct hearing, accused of stealing the final exam. The subject line of the email made my stomach drop. Notice of academic misconduct hearing. My hands shook as I opened it. The message was short and formal. I was being accused of unauthorized possession of confidential exam materials. The hearing was scheduled for the following week. I sat frozen at my desk, reading it over and over. How could this be happening? I was the one who tried to do the right thing. Now Parker and Natalie had twisted everything, and I was the one facing possible expulsion. Jacob was furious when I told him. This is exactly what I warned about. He's framing you to cover himself. I nodded, tears burning my eyes. But how do I prove I didn't steal it? It was in her notebook. She's the one who dropped it. Jacob paced. If we could get someone else to admit they've seen something, or if there's proof she had access. He trailed off, frustrated. The next few days were torture. Natalie acted like nothing had happened. In fact, she was more cheerful than ever, almost glowing with triumph. Every time she glanced my way, her smirk said it all. She knew she had me cornered. I tried to focus on preparing my defense. I gathered all my assignments, showing how hard I had worked, how much time I had spent in the library. I typed out a statement, explaining exactly how I had found the exam paper. But deep down, I knew the board might not believe me. To them, it was my word against a respected professor's. Then, out of nowhere, I got an unexpected message. It was from a classmate named Rachel, who usually kept to herself. She asked if we could meet privately. Curious and desperate, I agreed. We met in a quiet corner of the library. Rachel looked nervous, glancing over her shoulder before speaking. I think I know what's going on, she whispered. And you're not crazy. Parker and Natalie, they're way too close. I've seen her going into his office late at night. I even saw them leave campus together once. My pulse quickened. Would you be willing to say that? Rachel bit her lip. I don't want to get dragged into this. But I don't think it's right what they're doing to you. If you really need me, I'll back you up. Her words gave me hope, but I knew suspicion wouldn't be enough. The board would want hard evidence, not rumors. That weekend, Jacob came up with a bold idea. If Natalie's been getting special treatment, maybe Parker's left a trail. Emails. Messages. Something. It sounded impossible, but then I remembered something. During group project work earlier in the semester, Parker had accidentally shared a Google Doc link with the entire class instead of just one group. He'd fixed it quickly, but it proved he wasn't always careful with tech. So Jacob and I took a risk. We started watching Natalie's behavior more closely, looking for any slip. And then, on Sunday night, it happened. I saw her sitting in the campus cafe with her laptop open. She stepped away for a moment, leaving it unattended. I don't know what came over me, maybe desperation, maybe anger, but I walked past and glanced at her screen. An email was open from Parker. The subject line made my blood run cold, exam revisions. I didn't dare touch the laptop, but I memorized the timestamp and subject. When Natalie came back, she barely noticed me, too busy sipping her coffee. Later, I told Jacob. He grinned grimly. If we can get screenshots or logs of those emails, it's over for them. But how? We didn't have access to her account. The hearing day arrived faster than I expected. I sat in a sterile conference room, facing 3 members of the Academic Integrity Board. Parker was there, calm and collected, sitting like a man who knew the outcome was already in his favor. Natalie sat beside him, her expression innocent but triumphant. The board asked me to explain. I gave my account, finding the paper, turning it in, being worried about fairness. Parker countered smoothly. She must have taken it. I don't know how she obtained it, but I've never shared exam materials with students in advance. If I had, why would only she have it? Then Natalie leaned forward, her voice syrupy sweet. I don't know why Anna is targeting me, but she's been jealous since the semester began. Maybe she thought framing me would help her. The board members exchanged skeptical glances. I felt my chest tighten. This wasn't going well. And then the door opened. Rachel walked in, clutching her phone. "I have something to say," she announced. Every head turned. Rachel's voice trembled, but she spoke clearly. "I've seen Natalie in Parker's office after hours multiple times. I saw them leave campus together. And she held up her phone. I recorded a video last week. I didn't know if I should share it, but I can't let Anna take the fall for this." The video played, Natalie laughing in Parker's office, leaning casually on his desk while he said, "Don't worry, you'll ace the exam. I'll make sure of it." The room went dead silent. For the first time, Parker's composure cracked. Natalie's face went pale. The board members looked at each other gravely. One of them said, "We'll need to investigate this further." I thought I had finally won. But I was wrong. Because Parker still had one last trick up his sleeve, and he wasn't going down without a fight. The board dismissed everyone for a short recess after Rachel's video. My heart hammered in my chest. For the first time since this nightmare began, it felt like the truth was finally breaking through. Jacob whispered, "This is it. They can't ignore that." But when we were called back in, Parker was no longer the calm, polished professor I knew. His jaw was tight, his tone sharper, and his words carried venom. "This is a gross violation of my privacy," he declared. "Students sneaking around, recording me without consent. This is harassment. Rachel's video proves nothing except that students are conspiring against me." The board looked uneasy. One member asked, "Do you deny promising Ms. Summers an advantage on the exam?" Parker leaned forward. "Absolutely. I was joking with her. She's an anxious student, and I was reassuring her. These kids have twisted it into something sinister because they resent her success." Natalie piped up quickly, her voice trembling with false innocence. I never saw the exam in advance. Anna must have stolen it and is trying to frame me. I don't know why she hates me so much. Their performance was almost convincing. I felt the ground slipping again. But then Rachel cleared her throat. "There's more." She pulled up her phone and showed a string of emails. Somehow, she had gotten screenshots, probably from the same night I saw Natalie in the cafe. Subject lines read, "Exam questions, confidential, revision sent, delete after reading." The timestamps matched exactly what I had memorized. Parker tried to protest, but his face gave him away. The board leaned in, whispering among themselves. Finally, the chairwoman spoke. "We'll conduct a full investigation, but at this point, the evidence strongly suggests misconduct on the part of Professor Parker and Ms. Summers. Anna, you are cleared of wrongdoing." The weight lifted off my chest so suddenly I nearly cried. Natalie's smugness shattered, her mouth opening and closing like she couldn't believe it. Parker's hands clenched into fists, his mask finally gone. As we left the room, Parker shot me a look so sharp it felt like a blade. "You think you've won?" he hissed under his breath. "This isn't over." For a moment, I believed him. But in the weeks that followed, the truth finally unraveled. The investigation confirmed everything. Parker had been giving Natalie access to exams, bending rules, and grading unfairly. He was quietly forced to resign for personal reasons. Rumors spread fast, though, and everyone knew the real story. Natalie vanished from campus soon after. Some said she transferred, others whispered she dropped out entirely. Nobody missed her. As for me, I finished the semester with fair grades for the first time. It wasn't easy, my reputation had taken a hit, and whispers followed me for a while. But slowly, people started to respect me not just as the girl who stood up to Parker, but as someone who refused to let corruption slide. Jacob and Rachel became close friends. We'd sit together in the cafe sometimes, laughing about how surreal the whole ordeal had been. "You realize you basically took down a tenured professor," Jacob said once. "Not alone," I reminded him. "It took all of us." Still, I couldn't shake one last thought. Parker's final words haunted me. This isn't over. Months later, I saw a headline online. "Former university professor hired as consultant." His photo was right there, different suit, same piercing stare. I felt a chill crawl down my spine. Maybe he was gone from our school, but he wasn't gone for good. And part of me wondered if someday, somehow, our paths might cross again.